All right, let's dive in. Today, we're taking on a big one, something that's fascinated people for centuries, the immortality of the soul. And we're turning to the Bhagavad Gita for some wisdom.
A text that's, well, timeless, and surprisingly relevant even today.
For sure. We'll be zeroing in on the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. This takes place on a battlefield, with Arjuna facing an impossible choice.
Yeah, a situation that instantly grabs you, pulls you in. Picture this. You're a warrior about to fight a war, but your opponents, your family, your teachers, your friends, the weight of that, all the moral and emotional turmoil, it's like the perfect backdrop for these really deep teachings.
I can't even fathom that. So there's Arjuna with this huge dilemma, and Krishna, instead of battle plans, starts talking about the soul.
Exactly, right into it. Krishna introduces the Atman, the eternal self, the soul. He says the Atman, well, it isn't bound by birth or death. It doesn't just vanish when the body does.
So right off the bat, we're shifting perspectives. It's not about this life ending, but something carrying on, beyond what we can actually see.
And Krishna uses this really powerful analogy. He says the soul's like someone changing clothes. The clothes, that's the body, temporary, wears out. But the soul, it just moves on into a new form.
That's a striking image. I can see how comforting that would be for Arjuna right then. But for us, not on a literal battlefield, how does this eternal soul idea apply? Is it just about not being scared of dying?
It's way more than that. While, yeah, the soul's immortality can bring comfort when facing death, it also changes how we live right now. It makes us rethink our priorities, what we fear, even what being human means.
So how do we even start unpacking that? Where do we begin applying this ancient wisdom to our modern lives?
Well, a key takeaway from the Bhagavad Gita is detachment. Krishna teaches that a lot of our suffering comes from clinging to things that won't last. Possessions, relationships, even our own bodies.
It's easy to see that happening all the time. We get attached to an outcome, a job, even a certain image of ourselves, and when things go sideways, we suffer.
Right. But Krishna isn't saying be cold, have no emotions. It's about perspective. He uses this analogy like a drop of water merging into the ocean. The drop seems to vanish, but it becomes part of something much bigger, much more lasting.
So instead of holding on to that single drop, we see our connection to this vast ocean.
Exactly. And that change in how we see things, it lets us approach life with more calmness, acceptance, and ultimately more freedom.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this links back to Arjuna on the battlefield. If he gets this idea that his soul's eternal, that his true self is beyond this physical life, maybe he can act with more clarity, less fear driving him.
It's a huge realization, and it can change not just how we face death, but how we live every day.
So we've got detachment, this loosening our grip on temporary things. What other practical stuff can we get from this soul immortality concept?
Well, it makes us question chasing material success or fleeting pleasures as the ultimate goals. If we think this life's all there is, it's easy to get caught up in possessions, status, needing approval.
Right, it becomes about squeezing everything out of this one shot we think we have.
Exactly. But when we embrace the soul's continued journey, our view changes. Things that seemed crucial, status, wealth, they start to feel less important.
It's like suddenly we're playing a much longer game, and the rules are different.
Precisely. And realizing that frees us up to focus on what truly matters. Living in line with our soul's purpose, cultivating things like compassion, selflessness, contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
So how do we even start to understand our soul's purpose? Is it something we're born with, or do we find it along the way?
That's a question the Bhagavad Gita wants us to wrestle with. It suggests finding our purpose is about self-discovery, tuning into our deepest values, paying attention to what truly makes us happy, fulfilled.
Like peeling back layers, going beyond what society expects, and connecting with who we really are.
It's a journey, one that needs courage, looking inward, and a willingness to challenge what we think about ourselves and why we're here.
And this is where the Gita's teachings about Dharma come in, right?
Exactly. Dharma, often translated as duty or righteous action, is a central theme. It suggests each of us has a unique role to play. And fulfilling that, acting in line with our true nature, that's key to a meaningful life.
So it's not just living for ourselves, but seeing our interconnectedness and helping the whole.
And this brings us to another big idea, karma, often mistaken as a system of rewards and punishments, but it's really about understanding the consequences of what we do. Every choice creates ripples, impacting not just us, but everything around us.
So recognizing the power of our choices and trying to act in a way that matches our values, building a more harmonious world.
Precisely. And this understanding can be so empowering, especially when times are tough.
Because it reminds us we have a choice, that we can react to difficulties in a way that reflects our values, contributes to something beyond just us.
Exactly. And that's a powerful way to fight off despair, isn't it?
It really is. So we've covered detachment, purpose, dharma, and karma, all coming from this idea of the soul's immortality. It's amazing how much wisdom is packed into this one concept.
And we're just scratching the surface.
I know. It's a lot to take in, but it's incredibly rich, makes you think. Before we get into more specific ways to apply all this, it's important to say these teachings aren't meant to be strict rules.
Absolutely. The Bhagavad Gita is inviting us to inquire, reflect, interpret things for ourselves.
It's about taking these ancient teachings and seeing how they fit our own lives, finding what speaks to us, and applying it in a way that makes sense for our own path.
And that's where the real magic happens, right? When we let these teachings guide us, inspire us, challenge us to be our best selves.
It's an ongoing process of growth. I think that's what makes the Bhagavad Gita so relevant, even today.
It speaks to something deep within us, something timeless beyond circumstances.
It definitely does. And that's a perfect lead-in to our next segment. We'll explore even more specific ways to apply this ancient wisdom to our modern lives.
I'm ready to dive deeper. Okay, so we've got this foundation, right? The soul's immortality, that our true self, it goes beyond the physical. Now let's see how this wisdom can help us deal with everyday life, all the messiness.
One thing this understanding can really help with is fear and anxiety.
Oh yeah, that's something we all wrestle with. Our minds go to the worst case scenarios, and we end up feeling overwhelmed, stuck.
How does the Bhagavad Gita deal with that?
The Gita, it reminds us that a lot of our fear comes from, well, mistaking ourselves for the temporary stuff. We cling to our bodies, possessions, what people think of us, and when those things feel threatened, our whole sense of self feels threatened too.
It's like we build our world on sand. Anything can sweep it away.
Exactly. But the Gita gives us another way to look at it. It's like, hey, ground yourself in that unchanging, eternal part of you, the Atman, the soul. When we realize that our true essence is beyond those fleeting things, it's like this inner stability that can weather any storm.
So it's not pretending the fear isn't there, but finding strength somewhere deeper.
Precisely. And that change in perspective, it lets us act with more courage, more clarity, even when things are uncertain and scary. Like Arjuna on the battlefield. Once he grasps the truth about his eternal nature, he can face the impossible with this new strength.
Powerful imagery. And this ties back to detachment, right? Less attached to specific outcomes, less invested in how things should be, less likely to get thrown off when things go wrong.
Absolutely. Detachment isn't about like becoming a robot with no feelings. It's about cultivating equanimity, being able to watch life's ups and downs without getting swept away.
So it's a practice, something we develop, not an instant on-off switch.
It's a lifelong journey, definitely. And the Bhagavad Gita, it offers some practical advice. For instance, it stresses self-awareness, paying attention to our thoughts, emotions, how we react. By becoming more aware of how we get attached, we can start loosening that grip.
So noticing when we're clinging too tight, when fear's calling the shots, and then choosing a different way.
Exactly. And the Gita also emphasizes finding our dharma, our unique purpose. When we're living in line with that, doing things that express who we really are, we get this sense of fulfillment, meaning that goes beyond what's happening around us.
Like finding that perfect spot where our passions, skills, and what the world needs all come together. And that sense of purpose can be so grounding, especially when things are uncertain or we feel lost.
Absolutely. It's a compass, even when the path isn't clear.
So we've talked about how understanding the soul can help us manage fear, practice detachment, and find our purpose. But life isn't always easy. How does the Bhagavad Gita guide us through the tough times?
Well, one of the most comforting things the Gita teaches is that suffering is just part of being human. It's not something to run from or pretend isn't happening. It's something to understand, even embrace, as a chance to grow.
So we change our perspective again. Instead of seeing suffering as punishment or like we messed up, we can approach it with curiosity, maybe even compassion.
Right. And the Gita's like, remember, you are not your suffering. Your true essence, the Atman, it's beyond pain and sorrow. Doesn't mean we won't feel those things, but we can hold them differently, with more space, realizing they're temporary and don't define us.
Like waves washing over us, but we don't have to go under.
Exactly. And the Gita gives us tips on how to go through those times with more grace and strength. It emphasizes things like patience, perseverance, self-control.
Qualities that help us stay steady, keep going, even when we want to quit.
And the Gita reminds us, even in the dark, we have the power to choose how we react. We can lash out with anger, fear, resentment, or we can respond with compassion, understanding, and be open to learning and growing.
It's empowering to remember, even when things are really hard, we still have choices. We can choose how we show up.
And that choice, that conscious response, that's where true freedom is.
Powerful stuff. It really gets to the heart of the Bhagavad Gita. Living with purpose, meaning, spiritual growth, even when life throws curveballs.
It's a journey, and we don't have to go it alone. The wisdom of the Gita is always there, like a guide, inspiration, reminding us of who we really are.
A gift that keeps on giving. We can go back to these teachings throughout our lives, and each time find new insights, new layers of meaning.
That's the beauty of it, right? A source of wisdom we can keep coming back to, a wellspring of inspiration for our journey.
A timeless treasure, something from the ancient world that still speaks to what humans long for.
And it reminds us that we're not just physical but eternal souls, able to experience so much love, wisdom, joy. It's limitless.
As we wrap up this part, what are some key things you'd want our listener to think about?
The main thing is, the Bhagavad Gita isn't just about knowing the soul's immortal, it's about using that wisdom in our lives. It's about developing detachment, finding our purpose, being resilient, so we can face life's challenges and opportunities with more clarity, courage, and peace.
It's about recognizing our true essence, that it goes beyond the ups and downs of this physical experience, finding that unshakable foundation.
Exactly. And it's about choosing to live by our highest values, even when it's tough, knowing that what we do can make the world a more harmonious, compassionate place.
A powerful message that can change not just how we live, but how we see ourselves and where we fit in the bigger picture.
And it's a message for everyone, no matter your background, beliefs, or what's happening in your life.
A universal invitation to a life of meaning, purpose, and spiritual awakening.
A journey worth taking.
This deep dive has been, wow, incredible. It feels like we've barely scratched the surface of the Bhagavad Gita. But even this little bit has been eye-opening.
It's one of those texts, it just keeps giving. Every time you go back, there's more to discover.
A real testament to its wisdom, for sure. So as we wrap up our journey today, what's one question you'd leave our listener with? Something to really chew on as they go about their day.
Okay. Imagine this. You know for sure, with absolute certainty, that your soul is eternal. That this life, it's just one chapter in a much bigger story. How would that change how you live today?
Whoa. That's a powerful question. It really makes you step back, outside our usual way of thinking, and consider just how vast our being really is.
Yeah, it pushes us to live with more intention, more purpose, more courage. Because we're not just these fragile bodies, we're eternal souls with the potential for endless growth and change.
It's like a call to action, to align what we do with our best selves, knowing that our true essence goes beyond the ups and downs of this physical world.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the whole journey, all the good and the bad. Knowing that we're always evolving, always learning, always connected to something way bigger than ourselves.
This has been an amazing deep dive into the Bhagavad Gita. I really encourage everyone listening to explore this text further, see what speaks to you. It's a journey worth taking.
And remember, it all starts within. By cultivating self-awareness, compassion, and that connection to our eternal self, we can tap into the wisdom and peace that's already inside each of us.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep expanding your awareness.